I do not think that Vivaldi wrote all of his music. You know, they're always like Vivaldi wrote 600 violin concertos, but Vivaldi taught at an orphanage that was full of very talented little Italian girls. And I think that they're all his ghostwriters. All this to say, women's work is invisible.
Welcome to Created Creative. I'm Dawn.
And I'm Ruth.
And today we're just jumping in with no intro.
Kika, nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too.
And you two have known each other a long time, right?
We're food pantry friends.
Okay, wonderful.
And we
Would
have
you-
a further connection.
Let me hear it.
She grew up at the church my father grew up at.
You're kidding.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
That's so weird.
Where was that?
In Bethel Park, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Yeah, it was funny because Dawn was like, I'm with my mom. And I was like, that is Route 88.
I know that coffee shop.
From the sound of the road, I was like, that has to be
Wow.
Route 88.
Do you not call it South Park Road?
I don't call it South Park Road.
Because she says South Park Road.
I have a civil engineer dad, so it could be that's just what he calls it.
Mhm.
Bethel Park is a suburb of Pittsburgh, and I'm from even a little further away. And Bethel Park is glamorous.
Oh.
Bridgeville's a little less.
And
Okay.
Kika taught me something about that church that
Oh,
I
yeah.
never knew, even though I've been aware of it my whole life. Because it's called Ruthfred Lutheran. And as a child, I thought they were saying like Rutherford, or I don't know what I thought. You just hear a thing when you're a child, and that's it. But it's not Rutherford or anything. Kika, what is it? I just found this out.
I think the founders of the church, it was like a man and a woman, and the man was named Fred, and the woman's named Ruth.
Oh, Ruth Fred.
Fred, yeah.
That's
Named after
interesting.
actual people.
People. Yeah.
Everyone went with it. Can you imagine if you knew Ruth and Fred? You're like, Ruth, Fred. But it's a funny bunch, yeah.
That's interesting. I've never heard a story like that before.
No, I started out
Yeah.
in southwestern Pennsylvania, Little Lutheran.
Tell us the professional bio.
Yes, my name is Kika Wright. I am a professional musician, a freelancer, arts administrator, and now I'm starting my first year teaching in a public school, elementary music in New York City. It's awesome. I started out as a musician and I went to school to be a musician, and then I started freelancing. I was in Canada for school. And when I finally came back to the US in 2015, I moved to Baltimore, and then I was like, what am I going to do? Because there's just not a ton of playing jobs. I went to arts administrating. Everyone in the art needs money. So I learned how to write grants, and I learned how to shake people down for
Oh.
money in like a very friendly way. And then I went to education. I taught a couple years at an arts magnet high school in Washington, D.C., and one semester at a college, bassoon and oboe. And then my husband and I moved to New York City. He had finished his PhD, and then we moved here because of opportunities for both of us. I was working as a freelance musician, and I was out of town probably a third of the year or past half a year, because I used to play in Pittsburgh a lot. I used to play in an orchestra in South Carolina and California, and sometimes in Texas, other places in the South. And I play in a group in Canada, and then I would play in groups around, what is this called? The
Northeast.
Boston, DC megalopolis. Yeah. Then the pandemic came, and because I have a job, everybody needs to be together for me to do. I was not working at all. I love teaching so much, and I was like, I'm gonna get the certificate in education, because if I don't do it now, I will never do it. I'll still get older.
People get older. It's so
Yeah,
annoying.
it's weird. And you're like, I'm 36. How am I going to do this? And it's like, well, you're turning 38, whether you do the master's. So like, you should just do the master's. And then
Yep.
I applied for school. I also applied for a job at an organization in the Bronx called Bronx Arts Ensemble. I think it was within 2 weeks I got accepted to school, and I got the job at Bronx Arts Ensemble. So those two things happened concurrently.
Oh, wow.
And so at Bronx Arts Ensemble, it was like a 3-for-1. Curating the concert, so I chose all of the music. I was managing the musician, and I was like operations manager. So I was also managing where the music stands needed to go and who needed to be where and when. I did that a year. I was also teaching online. I was teaching recorder because it was
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
And people have that at home. You can do
yeah, and
recorder.
so I was like,
Yeah.
let's all go on mute and experiment with the sound. It was actually a pretty painless recorder experience because they just, played them in their house. And we even were able to do an online recital that was so cute.
Wow.
So then the pandemic became more manageable, and then people start to go out into the world. I got a slightly different job at Bronx Arts Ensemble. I became the music and education curator. So I was just choosing the music for the concert. And then I was also helping our teaching artist. Bronx Arts Ensemble had between 50 and 100 teaching artists of all different disciplines. I would help them wherever they needed help, but I would go to the schools and watch them teach. And it was also an opportunity for me to say, oh, wow, we have really talented teachers. Let's give them a concert in the Bronx. My job as music curator, I would pick a theme for the season, and I would choose music for the woodwind quintet and the string quartet, a combination of both. And then we had an orchestra. That was like 40 concerts. My first year, we did a survey of music of the Americas. So it was music from Chile to Canada. What did I do my second year? It was probably something about social emotional. And then the last season that I planned before I moved full time to teaching was Climate is Culture. And it was an examination of climate and how it affects culture and vice versa. Working in the Bronx, everything that happens to everyone in New York, it happens in an amplified way in the Bronx. Air pollution in particular is so much worse in the Bronx.
Why is that?
Is interesting. I'm not an expert in air pollution, but I do know that there are a lot of highways that cross over
Oh,
top of residential areas in the
okay.
Bronx. That doesn't happen in Manhattan. And it crosses over a lot of communities of color.
Sure.
The Bronx has the highest incidence of childhood asthma in the country.
Oh my goodness.
So
Wow.
there's also companies that ship things. A lot of them have their big warehouses in the Bronx, and then all these trucks, hundreds of trucks will drive out of
Okay.
the Bronx and drop it off in
Yeah.
Manhattan, and then hundreds will drive back in. And
Okay.
so those are things,
Yeah.
I think that contribute. So I know that even though people think of the Bronx as an outer borough, there's a lot of green space in the Bronx. There's a bunch of rivers, a wetland. So the people that live there are really affected by climate, and it affects their culture.
Uh-huh.
So that's climate
Yeah.
is culture.
Yes.
Yeah. So I left Bronx Arts Ensemble in May, and then in the fall, I started teaching at a school in Morris Heights, which is very close to the birthplace of hip hop.
Okay.
I love it. I love my students. They're so amazing.
Wonderful.
And it is, it's awesome. Yeah, so far so good. I'm still not-
Good. I wanted to ask, so you professionally play both the oboe and the bassoon?
I just play the bassoon professionally. The
Oh.
oboe, I know how to play and can teach it, but
How old were you when you started to play the bassoon?
I started bassoon in when I was 12 years old. So I was 12th grade, no, 12 years old.
Okay.
Because this is what happened. I started piano when I was very young and I wasn't very good. And then I did a couple weeks of recorder, and I think I got a C in recorder.
Huh.
And then I started clarinet. And I was also not very good at clarinet, but I kept trying the instruments. And
Mm-hmm.
clarinet teacher had a bassoon at her house, and she's like, Kika, this is a bassoon. And I was like, I would like to play that. And they found me a teacher. So I think, 7th grade.
Bassoon that's a big old reed instrument,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's like 3.5 feet
Yeah.
tall.
Uh-huh.
It plays low. Yeah.
And did you fall in love with it right away when you started playing?
Playing the bassoon is not like playing the flute or the violin or something. It's not so flashy, but it's an important part of the team. And I feel like that's the vibe of my life.
Uh-huh.
I really love playing bassoon. I love the sound. It was a big challenge. There's a lot of buttons, and it is like a lot of coordination. Kept me challenged. I think this is my 27th year.
Wow. Yeah.
Playing. Yeah, so I think I fell in love with music first, and then I was trying to find how I could be a part of it. And
Yeah.
it took me until I was 12.
And then the bassoon is kind of like no looking back once you found that.
It's great.
And what you said about your history, it sounds like you've performed in lots of different settings and you've taught. So, like right now, you're mostly teaching. Are you performing right now as well?
Doing like once a month cool gig or projects that I think are really exciting. But right now, I'm only really a member of a chamber group here in New York, and then I play in a chamber group in Montreal.
Okay.
And so in May, I'll go to Montreal for 5 days for a concert. And so I am playing. In the olden days when I was a freelancer, I took every single gig that wasn't nailed down, and I was just gone all the time, and it was very fun but very tiring.
I bet.
Now I'm teaching, which is awesome because I'm done work at 2:40, and in the rest of the day I can take a gig. And my school has been really understanding about me having to take a day off here or there. So I took a day off in the fall to play at Carnegie Hall.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome. Yeah.
So I actually think this is a better pace of life for me because I get to choose when I am playing the bassoon and not have to worry about playing bassoon to pay the bills. And so now I actually feel like I'm playing better than I ever have because the economic stress of it is gone, and it's just for fun.
That's interesting. That makes a lot of sense too. When you can do it more for the love of it than relying on it and putting that stress on it.
Yeah. And also when you are studying, especially classical music, although probably all musicians are like this, you feel like your identity is your instrument. And so if you go and play a concert and it doesn't go great, you're like, I'm not great.
Because there's nothing else to you.
Yeah. So now I can teach, I can go to the food pantry, I can play bassoon, and all of those things are like parts of a whole instead of the whole. No.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. So I'm just curious, do you try to set aside practice time every day with your bassoon?
This is what happens. I'm doing a project based kind of thing. And also in the winter, I have no energy for anything. In the fall, I played a really great concert with my chamber group, which is called Atlantic Collective. And it was a piece for bassoon and strings. So it was me and then a string quintet. I would come home from work and I'd practice 3 hours a day, 4 or 5. But that was like for a big project and I had to play really good. So now I do what I call maintenance. So I'll play a couple hours a week. I have a concert in February and then I have, I think, one in April. I'm trying to do one a month. So I know I have to get back into it. Usually Q1, I spend a lot of time making reeds, so I make reeds for my instrument.
Yeah.
But I'm not, so I'm doing a bassoon thing a day, but it's not necessarily practicing and don't tell anybody.
Okay.
Don't practice.
And that you've just told our scores of listeners.
Yes.
And a bassoonist would be like,
Nope.
I'm
They're
telling-
nodding,
yeah.
but we can't see them.
Did you say you make your reeds?
Yes, I do. I used to make 100 a year. I'll show you. So these
Oh.
are 8. This year I probably won't need 100.
You know when you go to Cracker Barrel and then there's that
Oh, yeah.
game with the
That's
golf
what it looks
tee?
like.
That's
I
what it
mean-
looks like.
And in fact, this is called a drying rack, the thing that is sitting. I have made
Oh.
one out of golf tees.
Wow. Is that common for bassoonists to make their own reeds?
It is, I think, what I have heard is a bassoonist in Europe will buy reeds from like the town reed maker.
Hmm.
There's like a person. There's a person in the town. Only
Yeah.
one European person has told me this. You might have been.
In days of yore or like now?
Yeah. When I started playing bassoon, everyone was like, you have to make your own reeds. You have to get a piece of cane and then whittle it. And
Wow.
you have to do all this stuff and you have to be really good at it. And especially after the pandemic, there were a lot of very fine reed makers who started like reed making businesses. So you can buy a reed that someone else made and they're
Mhm.
pretty good. They're much better than they were in the olden days because in the olden days, you could buy what is called a machine-made reed. I don't even know how that worked, but I guess they put it on a machine and they would shave it and then they send it to you. And some of them will be good and some of them will be like garbage. So,
Yeah.
but I still make mine because I spent all the time learning how to do it. And it's probably cheaper for me to do it than it would
Yeah.
be to buy a reed because I think they're like $30 or something. And I need
Yeah.
a lot.
What makes
So-
it good or bad?
Ballard.
Like, is it fitting your mouth because you made it a certain
think
way?
so, yeah.
The way like point shoes with professional ballerinas, they're
Probably
molding
the-
it,
it's probably
each
the-
one.
I can tell just by looking at it because the surface, you can't see it, but the surface is smooth.
Yeah.
And the opening is even. Some people like their reed frowning or smiling, like the bottom is pointing up or the top is pointing down. I don't like that. I make them, I use them for 2 weeks and then I put them in a box. And then sometimes someone will be like, I need reeds for a kid in Louisiana. And then I'll just
Oh.
mail the box. You can get very precious about reeds and you'll be like, I put 20 hours of work into this reed. And it's like, just don't do that.
Don't
It's
do
a
it.
piece of wood.
Yeah.
Just simply don't do that. But
And-
some people do.
You said they're made out of cane?
Some of it is grown in the south of France, and some of it is, I think it's called Arundo Donax or Arundo.
Whatever you half know is more than us.
It's like a type of tube cane. It's not bamboo, but
Okay.
it's a type of a tube cane.
Okay. So you
Comes
just
from-
order a bushel of it and yeah.
You can buy a tube. I buy mine one step past the tube because you have to buy the tube, you have to split it in fours, and then you have to do with a machine, and you have to do with another machine. I skip that. It's not good for your hands to be pulling like this for
Yeah.
hundreds of pieces of cane, but I form them myself and then I shape them. Yeah, I think it's south of France. I think there's also cane in Italy, and there's a Turkish company everybody liked, and then one in China called Golden Bamboo, but I don't think it's bamboo.
Okay.
But yeah, so
So bassoonists talk amongst themselves and you hear who has the best cane. That's so cool.
it is everybody their own feeling. I feel like the best way for you to get good at playing a bassoon is to just play a bassoon a lot. And so if you fall in the hole of, oh, my tube cane is from the south of France, or I went and cut it down in myself in the south of France and flew back with it and did all this stuff, and it's okay. But if you like can't push all the right buttons at the right time, it doesn't matter. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Just one woman.
Just one woman's
Yeah.
opinion.
Because I used to be like, if I do this, then I'll be really good. Or if I do that, I'll be really good. Or if I spend this much money. And then I was like, no, I think really doing the same thing until it gets a little better. I think that's the only way to do it.
Which leads
So-
well to one of Ruth's questions.
Yes. So how much of creativity is discipline and how much is inspiration?
I think maybe 75 discipline, 25 inspiration. Because I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who are like, I want to play the piano. Where do I start? And it's
Play the piano.
so, yeah. Or
Every
like,
day,
I want
yep.
to do this, but I don't know how to start. And then it's the thing that you want to do is cool, writing songs, playing bassoon. And I think you can probably do all those things like untrained. But I do think, or maybe untrained is not the right word. I think that if you want to be creative, you have to give yourself a lot of time and silence and stillness. And I think that takes discipline. You also have to be eating correctly. You have to be getting enough sleep. And that all takes discipline. Yeah. So I think 75%. Because the inspiration, you could just be walking down the street and it will hit you in the face. But if you're hungry or you're tired or your ankle hurt because you haven't been to the doctor to get your ankle fixed, you might miss it.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So what's been one of your most enjoyable creative experiences?
I know in the micro and then a macro one.
Great.
My macro one was probably when I was working at Bronx Arts Ensemble. We would sometimes partner with other organizations, and 2 years in a row, but the first year was really special because it was with my students. Bronx Arts Ensemble partnered with the Met Opera. We did performances in 4 of the 5 boroughs of New York with Anthony Roth Costanzo, who's a famous countertenor, and Bronx Arts Ensemble musicians. I was teaching as a teaching artist at PS 83, and we wrote a song that Anthony sang. And then we made some art that Anthony and then some of the other performers, like there was this juggling troupe, so they were performing. And then I got to pick the music with Anthony and also the director, who was like such a cool guy, Miguel Castillo. And so that was awesome. That was an incredible experience to work with all these people, to see. And also because I got to pick the music, I picked a song called Liquid Days by Philip Glass.
Ooh,
And Anthony sang it, and then 2 of the jugglers did like a love juggle. And I love public art. I don't think there's anything I love more than walking in a park and then there's a string quartet playing. I love public art. Everybody deserves to experience art like that. And so being able to stick the performance in 4 places, like we did it at a mall in the Bronx, like hundreds of
Wow.
people came, and
That's
we
cool.
did it in front of Brooklyn Library.
Yes.
And
Wow.
then the Queens Museum, and then in Manhattan we did it in Lincoln Center in front of the library. So people could just wander by and see and be like, no thanks, or be like, wow, that's awesome. And just by virtue of the fact that we were able to put it in so many boroughs, people could choose to enjoy it or not. I feel like that's the macro satisfying experience. And I just like love working with other creative people. Then the micro is I have a class of kindergarten, a very small self-contained class. Sometimes I will bring different instruments for us to just make noise with. On that day I had brought ukuleles, and everybody was playing all the open strings together, and it was just like very peaceful. And one of my students started singing a song. It was like in the melody of another song we had been singing, but he was like putting his own words.
Oh.
And I was like, this is awesome. Like, what a nice day. These kids are so talented.
Yeah.
So I would say recently that was very cool, creative experience. It was like, this is how you hold a ukulele. Hold it in your left hand, other left.
Yeah.
And I'm just like so proud of those kids because they're very careful with the instruments and they like really get it. So that was very cool. I think about that a lot.
Oh, wonderful. And who are some of your favorite creators?
In the music world, there is a composer. Her name is Brittany Green, and she's a composition professor at Duke. And she's incredible. I feel like all of the music that I've ever heard that she's written is just like really something special. And there was one time she was in Pittsburgh and I also happened to be in Pittsburgh, and I was like, is there any way we can get coffee? And we ended up sitting outside and it started to rain and we just talked for a couple of hours. She's just like incredible person. I think the music is just like, who else? Let's see. Because I am from Pittsburgh originally, and right before the pandemic, actually, because I was at this thing that they do in Pittsburgh called the Makers Market. And so a lot of the people there are women. So I was just like walking around looking at everybody's art and jewelry and clothing. So I feel like creative women of Pittsburgh
Are your favorite artists?
are my favorite artists. Women from Pittsburgh are cool. Dawn, you know this.
I have a mother that is
Yeah.
one.
Yes.
And I guess aunts.
Yeah, and I made friends with a couple of them. My friend Rona, she makes clothes. They're really beautiful and interesting. My friend Julie, she has a company. I think it's called South Atlantic Stitch, but she repairs quilts and she also makes quilted items. And in fact, she inspired me because she talks about how women's work is important and how important women's work is. And last year, I did a concert that was called Women's Work.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. How it started was there's a piece of music that Amanda Clearfield wrote that is a woodwind quintet piece that is based on different quilting patterns.
Oh.
So because Julie talked about how important women's work is, and then I started thinking about it, and then I started thinking about women composers and how another one of my conspiracy theories is that I do not think that Vivaldi wrote all of his music. You know, they're always like Vivaldi wrote 600 violin concertos or something.
No way.
But Vivaldi also had a complicated personal life that I believe would prevent him from being able to have such an output. That said, he taught at, it was called an ospedale, but he taught at an orphanage that was full of very talented little Italian girls. And I think that they were all his ghostwriters. I do not believe that he wrote all those concertos.
I'm needing the Amazon backstory. I feel like there's possibility here.
Yeah, I'm going to get to
Good.
the bottom
Can you
of it, but-
imagine breaking open the case of Vivaldi? It's just what America needs right
Yes.
now. And
Like,
really the
there's just,
world.
like, no way. He's like mythological almost. Every once in a while, you'll be like, oh yeah, there's like the symphony that Felix Mendelssohn wrote, but it was actually Fanny. Or there's
Yeah.
something that Mozart wrote, but it was actually Mozart's sister.
She really did have a bit of a career, but then she had to get married or something.
Yeah,
like that.
all this to say, women's work is invisible.
Yeah.
Even anyone, mother,
Mm-hmm.
everything she does is you come home to a beautiful house and it's because mom did it while you were at school. You're just take it for granted. Our concert women's work, we commissioned a piece by Jessica Meyer, who is a composer who lives in the Bronx. She wrote us a piece and it was for strings and winds and it was dedicated to the sisters that work at, to the nuns that work at the University of Mount St. Vincent. It's a very beautiful piece, but also just that, like, here are these ladies that vow to be poor and single for the betterment of everyone else for the whole entire lives. And we should be driving them around on a float. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they recently voted to end their order. So they're not taking on any new sisters. And so the sisters came and they're all like really cool older ladies and they sang for us, which is amazing. And then our group performed the piece. Yeah, it was awesome. So
Wow.
in that way,
Yeah.
creative women of Pittsburgh, women who compose, like women.
Yeah.
When you talked about women and how unnoticed, I was thinking about, I was leading a Bible study this week and it was Jesus healed this woman. And then it says, and she immediately got up and began serving. And I'm like, because of course she did.
It's like, girl, lie down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is very.
Yeah.
I think it is beautiful to serve. I don't think I would be a teacher if I didn't love serving. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
met Dawn if I didn't enjoy taking care of the community. That said, it's not just ladies' work. It's everybody's job. Sometimes things are not going the right way because only women are doing the serving. Yeah. So what a silly world.
I know. So right now, what is your favorite piece that you're playing?
I played a piece called Malambo for strings and bassoon by a guy, Miguel de Aguila, Aguila. It's very charming. Miguel is alive, which is also cool to play music that's written by people who are living, breathing. He liked the video.
He is both
So it's
alive
like-
and following you.
He is, yeah, he's a fan. What can I? So the word Malambo means it's a dance
Oh, okay.
from Argentina. And so the piece starts out very sparse and then it gets exciting, but it's like deconstructed Malambo. And then it comes to the Malambo. It's really beautiful. And that was so fun because bassoon players never get to play with strings. It's always strings and more strings, or there's a quintet. So clarinet plays with them every once in a while. And certainly not like music that people are writing who are alive right now. So that was very exciting. When I became a curator, I realized like, sometimes you were like, the personnel that I have are like these 4 people, and I need 45 minutes of music for these 4 people that are not 2 violins and a viola and a cello. I need music for a trumpet and a bassoon and a piano. And so now I'm like, thank God somebody wrote something.
How do you spell Malambo?
Malambo.
Okay. I want to listen to it.
My group is talking about recording, but if I wanted to record that, I would need to put in like another 100 hours. It's one of those things that like you learn it and then you don't play it for a while and then you come back to it already learned and then you make it like really good. I'm in the
In the
setting it
in-between part.
down. Yes. But I'll come back to it. It's really beautiful. Oh yeah.
I wanted to also ask you, how do you see creativity and spirituality connect?
Is it Martin Luther who said to pray ceaselessly?
And if necessary, use words. It might have
Yeah.
Francis of Assisi or
Maybe,
Martin
okay.
Luther.
I mean, I'm only
Pray
Martin
without
biased.
ceasing, and if necessary, use words. Listeners, let us know.
I wake up in the morning and I pray the day away. And so I have a very happy, safe, comfortable life. And I know that it's like a pretty extraordinary blessing. And so I feel like everything that I need or I'm supposed to do is because thanks to the Lord. Yeah, I think God has a plan and he's like, take care of yourself. So when you're walking down the sidewalk and I zap you with an idea, he will be ready to receive it.
Mm.
So yeah, I do think they're like 100%, maybe even 101% connected, at least for me.
And so I wanted to see, is there something that you're working on now or something you've been thinking about working on that Dawn could give you some coaching on today?
Let me think. 2 days ago, I wrote down in my bullet journal is like problems and solutions. It's
Great.
like one side problem, one side solution.
So you've
Wow.
They're
solved
my
everything.
problems.
Great.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
excellent.
the problem side is very full and the solution side is a little light. So starting this new job has been very challenging. Teaching in a public school in 2025 is very rewarding, but very intense animal. Play once a month. I'm trying to find some things for the summer. And then every once in a while, I think this is actually the thing. Every once in a while, somebody will ask me about helping them plan a concert. It's basically going back to freelancing, but in place instead of
The
the same
playing.
freelancing. I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be now teaching because I'm having tons of fun, but probably figuring out how, if I'm gonna freelance, I don't even know the word producer.
Like producer.
Maybe how to even start and do I have the capacity to do. So that's what I'm thinking about right now.
Do you know at least 5 people who would need such a thing? You must.
I know like hundreds of people.
Yeah,
Yep.
but 5 that you could contact and say, what if I offered this, so that you know if it's worth making space for?
Yeah, that's true.
And
That's
do places need it? I'm guessing a lot of places have let go of some curators and producers. Is there a need for you?
These are the questions.
You need market research, it sounds.
Yeah, they might actually not be looking. You know what's weird is that people are like, oh, this person is a DEI hire or whatever. I went to Columbia.
Yeah.
Like-
Earlier during your intro, I was like, why is she not saying the name of the school? I
Well,
thought
but-
that. Own it. A mediocre white man would have led with it.
I know.
I
Yeah.
went to Columbia and here's my professional resume. Come on.
Yeah, I did.
You did. You were already awesome enough on the front
Yeah.
end.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So yes, I went to school on 116th Street.
And no one outside New York
Yeah.
knows
Yeah.
116th. So is this an own your greatness moment?
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
How could you
Sometimes,
own your
yeah.
greatness more?
I'm humbled a lot. Trying to teach third graders in the Bronx is a very humbling experience. So
Yeah.
maybe I need to.
To balance it out. So do
Balance.
we want to talk about market researching your idea or talk about owning your greatness?
Sometimes I do feel like I own my greatness, and then sometimes maybe I don't.
What would it mean to own your greatness? What are we even going for?
Yeah, I don't know. I teach elementary music.
What
It's
if we didn't define you by your salaried position?
I'm still the same person that I was before I got the glamour job and went to conferences.
So how do you own the greatness that you have done that job and you have graduated from Columbia while following this awesomeness of being a public school teacher and serving and feeding your heart?
I will say the one thing that felt good is that working in nonprofit arts always felt a little bit like the wrong fit. Like I enjoyed it and there were things about it I really liked. Then there was always kind of like, I don't know, I just didn't feel like it was a thing I was like meant to do. This feels like, even on the days that are really hard, teaching feels like what I was meant to do.
You have realigned more into your calling, and the world says you're not as great because you don't have this specific job title, but your heart is saying you're greater than ever.
Yeah, and I also feel my brain is cooking. In the olden days when I was just playing bassoon, I always felt like I was using half to 3/4 of my brain at any time. And there are really fantastic musicians that use their whole brain when they're playing, and you can see it and you can hear it, and that was just never me. I feel like teaching, I'm using my whole brain all the time. I had to make something out of nothing. My school, when I showed up, they had 7 drums for over 400 children. I did a fundraiser and I got a class set of ukuleles, and then on Monday I got a class set of wharf instruments, which are like xylophones and metallophones. So now we have like
Or
at least
whatever.
30 metallophones, and we have a drum set, although I think the drum set is gonna stay in storage because I don't think we can handle it.
I think you brought all of this greatness into a public school. How is that not even more great if it feels like you're calling? I'm
Well,
like
that's what
arguing.
I'm saying. When they hired me for this job, I was like, I'm very good at making something out of nothing. I'm good at learning, which is why I like teaching. But yeah, I feel maybe that's what was the working in arts admin and the nonprofit arts. It's not that I didn't like that. I love that job. It just was like, how to describe. We would plan a concert and then there would be the feeling that the thing that we wanted to do was too much too political or whatever. And we had to rein it back, and sometimes it was never exactly the thing that I had planned it for it to be in the first place. So that was frustrating because even though you're a curator, you have a lot of people to answer to, and you have to answer to your community, and they might be like, "This is silly, I don't like it." At least in teaching, you talk to your kids and you find out what their life is like and what they like and try to tailor it to them. I don't know how to describe the difference. Of nonprofit arts was like more about, I use the word holistic. You know how there's like a word for everything now? In the olden days, we used to call having a concert at a church because it was free, like you do what you can. Now it's called creative placemaking. Yeah, calling around the churches until you find one that will rent it to you for less than $100.
Creative placemaking. I like that.
So
Yeah, everybody
you brought a skill set to a public school that hardly ever enters that school. And it's just the end of the first semester, and you've already gotten 2 class sets of instruments they never had.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the resources, but just that you feel more aligned.
Yeah, and a trip to New York Philharmonic. Oh yeah, I used to work at New York Phil for a little bit. And then, so now what is nice is like having all of my friends from my old, that's what I keep calling it, my old life, and being able to connect them to my new life. So our choir is going to go to New York Philharmonic in April. Yeah, in the spring of last year, this is almost a year ago now, New York Philharmonic did a youth orchestra festival, and I coordinated the youth orchestra festival. That was when I was doing that because it was with high school students. I was like where I belong. This is like way more fun. Kids are so much more interesting.
So really it's letting go of like society says being a teacher is somehow less.
Yeah.
And owning the greatness. Because the world isn't going to tell you you're great to the level that you just need to know.
No, you're right. And all teachers are really great. The people who teach are really incredible.
How will you remind yourself daily or even hourly that you're in your greatness?
I moved into a new apartment and I have a hallway from my bedroom to the main part of my room. And I put all of my degrees. So I walk through them.
You walk
Good.
through them every day?
To remind myself what I'm made of. And then when people come over and they look, and we did not hang up Adrian's.
So your husband's degrees are not there.
Just mine, yeah. And he's very much on board. He understands. So that's one thing I do.
Okay.
Remind myself what I'm made of. Maybe even bifurcating my old life and my new life because it's just my life. And I just feel like I'm a lot of things. I started out, I didn't even have an elementary school music teacher. Like we did recorders 3 weeks or something.
In
that
the
I got a
classroom.
C in. Yeah. And then I took piano, but I didn't even have an elementary school music teacher during my life. And I teach in a community who's a lot of Black and Latino students, which is cool. And sometimes I'm also like, it is cool for me to be here to take all of the learnings of my life and offer them to kids that deserve it. who
And
sort
you're
of
only in
know a
your
lot of stuff.
30s. This is an incredible amount of stuff to bring there
Yeah.
to someone who's young compared to the entire teacher pool.
That's true. It's funny. But like you said, if I was a dude,
Yes.
I would be like, oh, I went to Columbia and I went to Carnegie Mellon and but that's not my style. Also, as ladies, we're supposed to be modest.
That is a problem.
It is a problem.
Because it makes us all into all these little orphan girls that are silently doing this amazing work and getting no credit for it.
Then people don't think of, oh, who's highly qualified? You had never mentioned it to this person who needs to fill a slot.
Yeah,
Own your greatness. That's what we're calling this episode.
owning your greatness. And I tell my kids all the time to own their greatness. And then I'm like, you're very good at the ukulele. And they'll be like, really? And I'm like, why don't you know? I don't say it enough. That's probably.
Yeah. What if you said to yourself you were great as often as you tell your students?
I could give it a whirl. I definitely don't do that.
Yeah, just a whirl.
I'll give it a whirl. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm so glad that we could hear a little bit about your story today. And thank you for spending some time with us.
It is great to hang. It's so nice to see Dawn. I go to church on the internet right now because I have a busy week. Being a teacher is crazy.
So you don't want to get up on Sunday.
So yeah, I moved my TV in my bedroom so that I can watch from bed.
Nice.
And yeah, and
Sounds
Did
Adrian
you
made
see?
me
I
kiss
did
his
the
toe.
greeting this last week.
I did see. I thought I commented.
You might have commented.
on YouTube. Though.
I don't have the comments on when I'm trying to talk, but Maya is answering.
pay attention to me. Yeah,
You
Tell
type-
me your friend Kika.
Well, you're always worth my attention, but thank you for coming to this podcast and letting us pay tons of attention to you right now.
Thank you for listening to Created Creative.
We're so glad that you were with us to share in creative ideas with us.
And throughout the month of February, we want to include you in the creativity.
We are having a 28-day creativity challenge, encouraging everyone to explore a new creative activity each day. No repeats ingredients, 28 different things, and then the things that you try, take a picture and post it on social media with the hashtag Created Creative Challenge.
So go to createdcreativepodcast.com to sign up for the challenge and to get a list of 100 ideas to do during your 28-day challenge.
And Dawn and I will be going live each day to share our own creative quests.
Now, but especially during February, go create something.
Go create something!